black.
Yummy
Oh, that's wrong. Fade to black. Intro. Okay, here we go. In 5, 4, 3.
Yummy like a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for October 4th, 2024. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, Silent Hill 2 reviews are in, and did Bloober blunder? And where are we on the single player games are dead pendulum swing? But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Jordan Midler, everybody. Jordan, how are you doing?
I'm very well. The anti-Tam era continues. Long may it reign.
We've undone him, and he shall remain undone. It took all our efforts. You can't see it. We have some witches chanting just off screen. They're doing great work. Great work to keep him buried and done. And I believe he won't return next week, and so I won't have regret saying any of this. That'll be great. How you doing, Jordan?
I'm good, man. Quiet week for me. You might have seen. But apart from that, all good. Very busy. Video games do be happening. I'll be completing them. I'll be uploading my whole playthroughs. It's been a great week. How are you?
I'm great. It's like for some, like, what's he talking? Like, oh yeah, that stupid stuff on Twitter. Which I know a lot of people like. If they're not on Twitter, they hate hearing about this stuff. But also, like, I don't think about it when I'm not. As soon as I close Twitter, it leaves the brain immediately. I don't know if people realize that. And then it's like, oh yeah, and then these get on there and these goofballs are goofing it up, and it's just like, it's becoming fun to dunk on them again because they do just seem so lost and stupid. The whole thing this week is some idiot wants us to upload all our gameplay to prove that we beat the game before they can read our review, which is strictly prohibited by almost every embargo I've ever read.
Yes. Just before you read my review of this 100-hour RPG, set aside 100 hours to watch me play through it, including the 35-minute section where I'm deciding which spec to go with. I'm sure you're going to really enjoy the actual minutia of playing through a video game. Look, here's the thing. These Twitter people and all this stuff is very stupid. I think it's worth noting for people on all sides that when this stuff happens to me, I send it to my friends and I send all the insults, and the best insults get sent into my friend group chat, and I go, that's a fucking belter. That's really funny.
That's the good stuff. Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't affect real life. Twitter is not real life. Okay.
And it's like, man, I were doing an absurd job. You should be making fun of it. Of course you should. I'm a video game journalist. What is that? Yeah, let's do that. And so I enjoy all the good. But the problem is most of them aren't very good at it. The insults aren't very good, but when you get those good ones, that's really makes the whole thing worth it. How are you doing otherwise? It's we are kind of like I did the thing I think this morning actually finally where it's like all those games I keep saying, well, I'll just play that before Game of the Year, and now it's like, oh no. We're running out of time. I got to start playing some of those games I keep putting off. Nine Souls is the one that is at the top of my list because everyone says I would really like that. Everyone who has played it seems to really enjoy it. It's a Metroidvania game. So I'm like, okay, I should just get that loaded up and actually play it. How are you feeling about keeping up on games and all that stuff?
Yeah, I'm kind of, and I'm having a mix and a blend. I think as of 4 minutes ago, I can say I've been playing some of that Diablo expansion. That seems pretty good. Been playing something else that you'll hear about on Monday. Had a code for Silent Hill, played a little bit of that. It's just it's a charcuterie board to sound very Tory about it. But the main ones for the rest of October, I believe that will be my purview, will be COD and Dragon Age. So it's kind of just Dragon Age will be in early, COD will probably be in the day it comes out. So it's not too much of a crossover for those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's I guess it does help that for the rest of the year, outside of Dragon Age, which I'm curious to try, there's not a ton of stuff I feel like I have to play. Obviously like Brothership, I'm still gonna want to play, and we'll do some Mario Party stuff. But I might have a chance to actually catch up here and there. All right, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Silent Hill 2 reviews are out. It was doing like an 88 on OpenCritic. I actually missed the Metacritic.
Wow.
I'm probably around the same zone. Pretty good. That's a pretty high score. That's like I think people always do forget or just don't think about it maybe the way I do. Getting an 88, very hard to do. Most games struggle to get up above that 85, 86. So that's a very good score. I'll start here with Mark Delaney from GameSpot, who gave it a 9 out of 10. It says, remaking one of the most revered horror games ever is no simple task, but Bloober Team impressively rebottles the magic of the 2001 genre landmark. Tristan Ogilvy at IGN gave it an 8 out of 10 and said, Silent Hill 2 is a great way to visit or revisit one of the most dread-inducing destinations in the history of survival horror. James Kennedy gave it a 3.5 star. I did not write down where they're from. I forget. Bloober Team's version of Silent Hill 2 often feels like a high-fidelity version of the original with remixed puzzles and item locations. The combat is reasonably satisfying. The boss encounters have been improved. But what is fundamentally a great horror game is partially undermined by the over-the-top sound design, injection of jump scares, and general lack of restraint. Chris Scullion gives it 4 stars over at VGC and says Silent Hill 2 is a skillfully handled retelling of one of Medium's most loved survival horror games. It stays faithful to the original to a fault at times, but breathes enough new life into simultaneously ensure that longtime fans will appreciate the respect shown, while newcomers won't find it antiquated. Have you been playing this at all? I've not. Jan and Dan have. I've been missing out so far, but I will when it launches.
Yeah, I'm about 5 hours into it at this point, just kind of beyond where myself and Dan played the preview
Right.
a couple of months ago. It seemed really good. As you say, 88 is higher than I would have expected. I think I'm just about in line with Chris's review, the kind of 4-star area. It's basically, I think it's a great reset for what Silent Hill fans would want. Like, there's a bit of stability to the Silent Hill ship after so long of nothing, and it kind of reminds me of Metal Gear Solid Delta in a sense, where it's like you don't want to take massive swings when you have no goodwill. This is get us back on solid ground and we'll see where we can go from here, and they seem to have done very well. And Bloober Team, I think after speaking to them, I actually think they got quite an unfair rap, because I said to them quite cheekily, I didn't mean it to come across so badly, but I was like, all the journalists can't believe how good this game is, and they were laughing and they were like, they seem to understand what their limitations are and they're trying to get better, which is great to hear, and they seem like a good bunch. So yeah, it's I enjoyed it. It doesn't quite hit that level of like the Resi 4 remake or the Resi 2 remake or anything like that, but it's in the conversation, and I think after the sentiment around that game earlier this year, the fact that that's the case is a huge win for them.
Yeah, I always had expectations that they'd be able to make this one work. They could probably ignore the demons that maybe Bloober carries sometimes that causes them to put a little too much into some of their own games that people dislike, and it's like, well, we could just work with the good stuff that's already here. And really, this I've said this before. This is the ideal scenario for Silent Hill fans, where they could fret and be angry for months that Bloober Team was going to mess up their favorite game, and then when the game comes out, they actually get to also enjoy Silent Hill 2 again. So they get the best of both worlds, to hate this game for a long time and then love it maybe once it's out. I think it remains to be seen once it's in the wild how the true, the people who bleed Silent Hill, how they're going to feel about it. But it seems like this is setting it up for the best chance for this to win that crew over. And I'm always curious reading these reviews as well. It's like, what do people want from a remake? Because me personally, when I think the Metroid Prime Remastered was fantastic. And then I think Shadow of the Colossus was one that's like, I don't know, I feel like some of the magic was lost, and I like the more eerie look of the original personally. And Link's Awakening, kind of same thing. I'm like, I like the way it looks on the Game Boy and that style and this toy-like diorama stuff. I think it's beautiful, but it's maybe not for me. Everyone comes in with their own preconceived notions, and I think we saw that even in these small quotes I read. Like James Kennedy's like, a game is partially undermined by the over-the-top sound design, that like the injection of jump scares. So it's like new jump scares is kind of like not what I'm looking for here. And then Chris is like, yeah, those updates kind of make it help it avoid feeling antiquated. So I think it's gonna have to get out in the wild and let those real big deal fans see how they feel. And I'm sure they will probably find a handful of things here and there. But I get the sense that overall, most people are going to come away from Silent Hill 2 very happy. And it feels like setting up that franchise for long-term success again.
I also think people who have no history of the Silent Hill franchise could just play this and not particularly feel like it's a PlayStation 2 game. And I think that's a great advantage, especially as the people who, as we get further away from that era, and the cachet that Silent Hill had is only felt with people that were around at that time.
Playing it at the time.
Yeah, this is just a brand new AAA horror game. I think will go down very well with people. I get the sense that the Silent Hill community are obviously, they've been hurt before kind of thing, but I think they can take solace in the fact that this comes out, it's well received. Hopefully it does well commercially. And the question I have for you is, do you think the community wants another one of these from Bloober, or does the community want Konami to say, okay, Bloober, you can have the next new Silent Hill game?
Yeah, that's I kind of hope they can work towards a world where they get the chance to do both. But I think the safe thing probably right now is do another remake, because you did really good with 2. Now take that and actually maybe increase the estimation of Silent Hill 3 and the rest of them up to this level, or get as close to this as you can with those other ones, so that we can have this baseline to work with. And then maybe start on the side, begin work on what might be a new Silent Hill. Now, what Silent Hill F stop or whatever it is, Silent Hill, I don't know, the one that's supposed to be Silent Hill 5, I guess. I'm not a fan of the series. I don't know. They are making a new Silent Hill, right? But I guess I don't know if that's like supposed to be a full-blown new sequel, or sort of like maybe something kind of new.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really interested to see the Silent Hill game from No Code, who are a developer based in Glasgow. They previously did Observation, which I thought was excellent. I really like this new Konami era of just letting people do what they want with the properties. Not entirely what they want, but as VGC reported years and years ago, this was an initiative for Metal Gear, Silent Hill,
and Castlevania. Where's my Castlevania, you lying sacks of shit? Sorry, that came from deep.
It's right there with the Days Gone remastered, as in it'll come out someday. But yeah, I think that, I'm very happy with how they're going with Metal Gear, and that's a series that's important with me. Fucking Johnny Metal Gear, Mr. Reichert, seemed very happy with how it's going.
Does seem very happy with it.
They seem to have had a bit of humility in the sense that they're like, we can't really do these anymore. We have some of the people that can still help, like some of the original Metal Gear team is still producing this remake, but I think it's a good sign. I can only assume that most developers looked at the last 10 years of Capcom and went,
Oh, 1,000,000%. Yes. And it's like, it already worked for Konami, where, before the Metal Gear Solid collection, like Konami makes a lot of money. They do pretty well as a company, but when you looked at the growth, which is what these companies really care about, and we've talked about this before, everybody, so if you've heard this before, I'm sorry, but they were looking at the growth and being like, man, Capcom's growing real fast and we're just not. Yeah. And then they put out the Metal Gear Solid collection, and instantly they're like, whoa, we kind of have Capcom-like growth here immediately from just the collection. So I think that is a very encouraging thing from their point of view. So expect them to kind of keep going down this path.
Yeah.
And as long as they are choosing the right partners, are making the right investments, are not rushing anything, sort of have a good technical baseline. I mean, that's the advantage Capcom continues to have, is the Reach for the Moon engine is so good that they know how to use it so well, and it's so versatile that they are able to, like, okay, now we're adding open world stuff to this, and that's going to be the next 3 games from this engine. That's a huge advantage, of course, but that is not like the reason everything works at Capcom. The reason works because they are picking the right franchises and making good games, and Konami has now been able to do this, and I think they're going to reap the exact same rewards that Capcom's been getting. So yeah, I think they do make new Silent Hill games going forward. They've already announced the one. I think beyond that, keeping Bloober sort of in their orbit now at this point, now that like Silent Hill has maybe found its footing and Bloober's found its footing with Silent Hill. I don't think either side's going to want to give that up necessarily. Now, that's as long as Konami remains pleasant to work with, which is just historically not always been the case. So I think we have to wait and see, is this period that they're in, that I agree with you. I think this is a nice period for Konami, but is it an exception and they backslide and they become the weird secretive company that they were before again? So we'll see.
Well, they still do that ridiculous thing where people's email addresses are just a scramble of numbers.
They do still do that? I didn't know that. Man, that's nuts. That was like an early thing I discovered in this. And I'm like, this person emailed me and that's another I could tell this is a different random set of numbers. And I looked into it trying, like, can I find someone at Konami specifically? It's like, nope, it is a random number system for their email address. Bonkers company. All right, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom has strong launch in Japan. This is from Game Data Library on Twitter, who tracks these things and kind of puts out Excel sheets every once in a while. Retail launch sales of The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom in Japan are 40% higher than Link's Awakening Remake. With digital, it should be above A Link Between Worlds and be the third biggest launch for a 2D Zelda in 30 years after the Nintendo DS games. Although, so it sold 200,000 copies in Japan in its first week. That puts it ahead of Link's Awakening, which was 141,000. And then if you, let's see, like the DS games, the Spirit Tracks was 320,000. Phantom Hourglass was 288,000. So that's 88,000 more for like Spirit Tracks. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, with digital, it's actually like an extra 100,000 copies, like 75%, 25% for a Nintendo Switch game in Japan. That doesn't sound, or that'd be 66%, 33%. That seems very possible. So yeah, this could be one of the best-selling 2D Zelda games, or fastest-selling 2D Zelda games in Japan so far. And hey, good for it.
7 years into this console. Like, if they hadn't already said that they were going to do Switch 2 in the next financial year, stories like this would make me think they're going to get another year out the Switch. They're just going to keep doing this over and over again, and it's still going to be like, yep, sold massively well. I think that's where
we're in that, right? Because this was like the system kind of does feel like maybe it actually was supposed to come out this holiday, and they've sort of just kind of moved everything out a couple of months, a couple of weeks here and there to fill in that space. And so, I mean, when I see this stuff, I agree. It feels like if they wanted to, they could make that same decision yet again. But hey, a Switch 2 in 2025, like, I think a couple God, no. I think a few years back, it was like, that is actually probably what's going to happen, because the system just has so much momentum. And here we are witnessing that over and over. Now, in terms of hardware sales, clearly sputtering to a certain degree. But sputtering relative to the Switch and nothing else, like not relative to any other console ever in a lot of ways. So, I'm still playing this game. This is the game I'm playing the most right now. Continue to fall in love with it more and more as I play. I think it does have a rough start, but as I kept playing, it is when I started just exploring on my own and not necessarily just going waypoint to waypoint, it turns into a really different game where I'm just trying a bunch of dumb shit and almost all of it works and makes the game break in fun ways.
Yeah, Andy wasn't mega hot on it.
Yeah, so I saw the review,
Yeah, he was one of the lower ones, but it's interesting. I like open world Zelda. I don't have a great affinity for Zelda as a franchise or anything like that. Like, these little side games don't do much for me. I'll play the big main titles because it almost feels like you need to be in this space. Like, they're marquee releases. Like, it feels like they're these important kind of games of record almost. But it's cool to see that them making this swing to have you play as Zelda has gone down well with folk, because it would have been a shame for them to do this and then it come out and be a little bit half-arsed.
The Super Princess Peach game, right, where it's like, what is this? And that was like a bummer because people have been like, wow, we get to play as Peach for the first time ever. And then it comes out, it's like the powers are, she cries a lot and because she's emotional, and for as awkward as that is, at least it was different, but then the game just wasn't very fun. I think that this game is probably worth like looking into on like TikTok or something from your point of view then, because just seeing all the weird stuff people have been doing. The fun thing, I talked about this on the podcast last night, but the new meta now is You get a water block, you spawn it anywhere, then you use the bind ability to grab the enemy, and you just drag them in the water block, and they drown instantly. And you can just basically kill anything in a second. It's a lot of fun, and and getting the like the fish, the dead fish, and having a bird and binding yourself to the bird and holding the fish, and then the bird chases the fish, and so you start flying, and you can fly across the entire map. Once I started doing that, it's like, man, this game, it just feels like, oh, it's gonna let me do whatever I want, like these recent Zelda games, and not necessarily like any other Zelda game before those. So very cool game.
One of the best experiences I had in Tears of the Kingdom was before the game came out. Nintendo got all the journalists to like this little event, and they had switches set up for us to capture the game. And it was the opening couple of hours of all the TVs being next to each other, and you would just look over your shoulder and be like, what's he made? How is he doing that? Like, how has he suddenly got like a motorbike that can fly? And I loved it in those kind of mysterious circumstances. For me, as soon as it goes on Twitter and people have built like Transformers, it loses it for me. It's like, I'm not going to do that. I've got no interest in that. Just show me like the thing in Tears of the Kingdom where it's like 3 elements make like this perfect jet bike, and I'm like, okay, that's what I want to see, not any of this other crap.
Oh yeah, totally. And that's the perfect jet bike is like, man, this is actually useful. I'm gonna kind of break this game that way. Yeah, a lot of similar stuff in how I've played it so far. So the game clicked for me when I realized that the big mountains between like one area and the other that you've had in previous Zelda games, you can climb on top of those and just take shortcuts into the other areas. And that just felt like, it's ingrained in my brain from playing those old Zelda games that those are just, you just don't interact with those. Those are nothing. So kind of feeling like I am now playing in the margins a little bit was like, oh God, this opens things up. And I just feel like I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be. And if you want to get me excited about a game, make me as a player feel like I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be, because that's like, oh, I'm a mischievous little guy. Yeah, it's a good time for me. They're gonna keep doing this with Zelda though, right? Where take a lot of time making the big marquee Zelda that everyone can't ignore, even if you don't have a lot of love for Zelda. It's like, nope, everyone has to pay attention to this. That's obviously happening, of course. But then doing these side games, these the 2D games, stuff that feel a little bit different, where maybe they're taking other kinds of risks. There's no reason not to do this, because this seems like it was probably affordable to make. Works with a team that has already had success, and it's kind of fills in a gap for this franchise and for Nintendo's lineup, right?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I like that both Mario and Zelda can have this multi-pronged approach where there's always something going on, but it's kind of end capped by these big traditional experiences. It's something that I would love for my dearly beloved Pokemon, but I think the Pokemon company's much more hesitant to explore those kind of things. They had a while in like the GameCube GBA era where it was like there was very few mainline games and it was just side games after side games. But they have in recent years very much kind of disavowed not only doing that, but some of those games like the GameCube games XD, Gale of Darkness and stuff like that. I think it was Masuda-san was asked about a remake of something like that and he just laughed, because it's like, it's not one of their games, it's not the Pokemon company, like it's very buttoned up. I liked the new Pokemon Snap was nice. It's also the best looking Pokemon game ever because it was not made by Game Freak. And things like Pokken are cool, but I would love like a Pokemon style experience that isn't a fighting game or isn't a big genre change, that isn't the kind of traditional generational RPGs.
Yep.
Pokemon with a gun, good question. Pokemon with guns, it's never been tried before.
It seems impossible.
Let's do it.
How's he even going to hold that? He doesn't seem like he has thumbs, that Pikachu fella. This morning, dropping kid off at school, she talked about how she wants a Pikachu Squishmallow. She has not played Pokemon, but then she goes, I want to play Pokemon. Now, Jordan, what do I do here? I'll tell you, my hunch is let's go Eevee or let's go Pikachu. I think that seems like the right move. Also, she is really kind of getting the hang of reading. So I'm like, oh, this could be a good chance to like speed up that process as well. Is that the right move? Is there maybe a different way to go?
You've absolutely nailed it in one. Okay. Let's Go Pikachu is the one to do it. It'll introduce her to the original 151, which is still the group of Pokemon they merchandise the hardest. So all the ones that she's probably seen in toys and stuff like that are all in that game. Do you have the version of it that has the Pokeball controller?
No.
that came out at the start? Okay, well, if you can come across one of those are great fun. But even just the base game, it's you'll probably find it more interesting because you physically, like, you move your hand to throw the ball if you want to. You don't have to do that kind of thing. But yes, Let's Go is a great starting point. And then you start getting her into the merch, including my Vincent Van Gogh Pikachu here, which I would have stabbed a man to get, but thankfully I just caught one of the restocks on the Pokemon Center and didn't have to like attack
Right,
Dutch
didn't have to actually
tourists.
hurt anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Let's Go is a great start. On the reading thing, I know the original Red and Blue were huge for like a lot of young people with Game Boys, learning words that they didn't know, things like that. So yeah, I think that's a very great shout. Get her into the trading cards. That's what you need, a trading card addiction.
Dirty, filthy mouth. You keep me out of that. I don't want to deal with that. I'll get her the Squishmallow. I don't give a shit, but I'm not bringing those cards into this home. This is a Christian home. It's not, actually. All right. Ubisoft's effort to save Star Wars Outlaws continues with huge patch. This is from Blair Marnell at GameSpot. Ubisoft hasn't been shy about admitting that Star Wars Outlaws didn't have the strong launch that the company was hoping for. Some reports have stated that Star Wars Outlaws only sold 1 million copies to date. Regardless, Ubisoft hasn't abandoned its efforts to improve the game, and the latest patch may go a long way towards fixing many of the game's issues. The new Star Wars Outlaws Title Update 2 is out now for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, S, and PC via the official Ubisoft site. Some of the most notable changes are elements like the number of NPCs, the NPCs and their patrols have also been modified. Did I skip a sentence? Yeah. Some of the most notable changes are related to Outlaw stealth sequences. There we go. AI detection has been tweaked, and other elements like the number of NPCs and their patrols have also been modified. The speeder experience has also changed to improve the camera position, and the collision was reduced to keep players from being knocked off their speeders so easily. I like that, actually. That was a good time. It was funny every time she would just completely eat it. And I'm like, she should be dead. Her guts should be liquefied the way she just stopped like that. I continue to be someone who is enjoying this game for the vibes, for the Star Warsness, for the little dioramas at every little corner, just like little scenes. And it makes it very easy for me, maybe having a Colorado night, to lose myself in the game and not care so much about what's having me do. Like, I'm not so worried about the verbs, but they want to keep improving it. I'm not complaining. I would like to enjoy it more than I'm enjoying it. So sounds good. I get the sense that they feel like they really got to get this one in a good place. There's not a lot of other options for them. Is that how you feel?
I can't remember a time where a major publisher so quickly lost confidence in not just the game, like the internals of the game. Like, this feels like kind of, I'm sure there are other examples, but the fact that they're constantly putting out these messages being like, yeah, some of the core gameplay isn't good, like, we didn't catch this beforehand, but now everyone's telling us that it's not great, it's very, very strange. And I feel quite bad for Outlaws, that it seems to have just been this lightning rod for Ubisoft's problems, that it seems that if they can somehow fix this, all will be well. I know that it didn't sell well for a Star Wars game, and that was obviously a shock. A lot of people are super Star Warsed out at this point, but I still think that they were probably thinking, okay, let's get in on that Battlefront money that EA got, and to a lesser extent that Jedi money that EA got. And it's just the big console Star Wars game isn't this unique experience that it was a couple of years ago when all these companies started doing it again. So I don't know. I was pretty. I think the game's fine. I don't know if with all of this stuff it would get up to a 4 for me. I gave it 3 stars. But,
right.
The kind of unison with which I've heard the same complaints about the stealth and the speeder, like, it obviously struck a nerve. I just wonder if it gets to a point where in 6 months, when all the DLC's out, people are like, yeah, it's finally pretty good, but how much does that actually change how Ubisoft sees the project as a whole? Because I can't imagine it's a particularly sunny atmosphere over there at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's like some easy wins. You improve like the wanted system when the Death Troopers show up, make them a little bit more just make them better, make it more menacing, do something there, something more interesting than what happens when they actually land, where it's most, I try to run away from it, ignore it. And then when I do run into them, they seem kind of stupid. It's like, I don't care if the rest of the stormtroopers and enemies have dumb AI, whatever, but it's like, at least the most threatening thing should feel like a threat. And then, yeah, I think if they can just kind of get people through those early stealth sequences a little bit faster and to what I feel is like the meat, that would probably be better off. But you're right. I don't know if this game is going to go from a 3 to a 4-star game. I think this is a good game. Probably never going to be a great game. I'm someone who loves good Star Wars games that are not great, so I'm okay with that. That really works for me. But it's clearly not something that's going to put a lot of people over the top. And you're right. The people are getting, if you do care about Star Wars, if you are one of these freaks that's still out there being like, I just want my lightsaber, there's Fortnite out there for you, giving you all that stuff nonstop. And this game is like, well, what if we explored the interesting underworld, and there are no Jedi and all that stuff? And I guess that's just poison to a lot of people who are bad at being fans, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing they could do to make that game better for me is give me one slot to keep an Empire weapon, because it is so annoying that they have so many.
Ladder and you have to drop it. What a crazy thing, actually.
Yeah, so stupid.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe like change the economy of ammunition or something like that, so it's like I don't feel like I can use it all the time. But just one slot, I can keep it with me when I climb up a ladder at the very least. And then when I leave the place, it's actually hard to come by that ammunition. So I'm on other missions, I'm not using it so much. I think that'd be completely fine.
Like, do like a Red Dead system where if you have more than one long weapon, you have to put it on your speeder and you can only physically recover it from your speeder. Like, the fact that Kay is like, well, life or death situation here. I know there's this rack of Imperial weapons. I'm just going to leave. And it's not even like, oh, well, Kay doesn't want to use Imperial weaponry. She both sides the rebels and the Imperials throughout the entire game, so she does not care. There is no canonical reason beyond maybe they thought it made it too easy, but I have no idea.
I think they made that upgrade path for the main blaster such a core part of what they thought the experience should be, that they didn't want people getting distracted with other weapons. And I think upgrading that blaster does make it more fun to use that thing. But it just feels weird to get the E18 or whatever the hell it is and be like, this is so useful in this circumstance. I am finally able to blast my way out of here. And now I'm going to climb on the speeder and she's going to drop it. It's weird. All right. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, more from Ubisoft. Maybe they got co-op in Assassin's Creed and a new Avatar: The Last Airbender game right after this. All right, we're back into it. Pikachu Van Gogh is still with us. Don't worry, everybody. Assassin's Creed Shadows is getting a co-op mode, according to a report. This is from George Yang at GameSpot. Assassin's Creed Shadows is reportedly getting a co-op mode after the game's launch and is codenamed League. This is according to Insider Gaming, which notes that details on the co-op mode are scarce. The report speculates that it could allow for dual protagonists Naoe and Yasuke to fight alongside one another, although that detail is unconfirmed. Shadows was recently delayed to February 14th. It's unclear if the co-op mode will be available right at launch. Yeah, this feels like the kind of thing that every game considers these days, and maybe there's no guarantee it's actually in the game at all, ever.
Yeah. This is kind of weird because when I saw Shadows, the pitch was like, whether you play as Yasuke or Naoe, the experience is entirely different. It's like completely changing the way that you play. Whereas now, if you have a Yasuke running about clearing shop, destroying those cartfuls of oranges that they like to show 1,000 times in those trailers, it kind of throws off the AI of like a stealthy kind of character. It seems like a weird, it seems really weird.
Well, it seems difficult for at least for the campaign, right? Like to make the campaign work, it seems like it'd be the kind of thing where it's like there have to be bespoke co-op missions or something, so that like one person is being the guy, the heavy that runs in as Yasuke and distracts everybody, and then the stealth person can continue to go stealth their way in, and the game would have to be accounting for that in a way that it doesn't, from having not played it, doesn't seem like it's going to be able to account for in the campaign. I also, if they have other distractions of just trying to get this game polished here at the end, One thing that's easy to put aside is a feature you have not promised is not supposed to be part of the game yet. It might one day be an extra feature you add. They've done the co-op Assassin's Creeds before. I don't know how much those have ever moved the needle all that much. I think the way I would guess it's like it probably isn't something a lot of Assassin's Creed fans are asking for, because when a new Assassin's Creed game gets announced, I don't hear a lot of people out there being like, remember that one Assassin's Creed co-op game? This one should be like that as well. That's not what really anyone is saying. So I wonder if Ubisoft would put any real emphasis on making sure this feature gets completed, as opposed to the development team being like, we've continued to experiment with it. Maybe this is something we could do. I don't know. Feels like it won't actually ever happen.
Maybe like a Ghost of Tsushima Legends type thing where it comes like a year later and it's like it's attached to the main game and there's like a bit of story about it, but Ghost of Tsushima Legends broke down into 4 samurai like circling people and just battering them with swords. Like it just it has to be something that is different. I think as you say, I can't imagine the look on the devs' faces if they were like planning this as a single player experience where you switch between the two, all the encounters are designed like that, and then suddenly there's an expectation of co-op. So yes, I think this could very easily, as a lot of these things are that get reported that aren't announced, whiteboarded, and then it's decided that it's not worth the time, especially because of how big this game has to hit now. We talked about it last Friday, but the fact they're putting it in February, which is just a ridiculous release date in terms of busyness already.
That's also Lara Croft's birthday, so people are going to be celebrating that.
It's Lara Croft's birthday on February 14th.
Valentine's Day, yep. Of course.
Oh,
yep.
Well,
now you learn something new every day on this show. Hey, you said it. Whiteboarded. It's so easy to scratch something off on a whiteboard. It's so easy to be like, yeah, we have this, even if it is mostly there. Will it be a benefit or a distraction for this game going forward? Will it be yet another thing we have to sort of account for in testing and then supporting the game going forward? Are people going to be like it so much that we have to keep making new content for it, but it's not really selling that many more copies? So is it worth it? Like, everything's part of that calculation. Yeah. Speaking of Ubisoft and calculations, there is a report from Bloomberg today. Just happened here. I saw it in chat. Haven't been able to fully read it, but let's just kind of go off the headline here in the first little bit. Apparently, the Guillemot family is maybe looking to partner up with Tencent to take maybe not take the company back private, but to like sort of buy up the rest of the shares so that Ubisoft no longer has to worry about the other people who are on the board of directors and the investors. It seems to be what they're saying. I'm actually good to hear from Tencent, or from Bloomberg, excuse me. Tencent, Guillemot family said to consider buyout of Ubisoft. The deliberations come after falling game developers' share price. Tencent and Guillemot family hold minority stakes in the French firm currently. And that sounds like they would try to buy out the rest of the shares. I mean, I guess that makes some sense because the stock price has fallen. So if you're going to do it, you would want to do that now. But is the answer to Ubisoft's problems more Guillemot?
Maybe it delays the fruits of those problems somewhat. That seems like they want to just get into a position where they're not fighting a fire on the financial side and the game quality side. Like, if this gives them a bit of leeway to get their house in order with their actual main product, then potentially, I'm sure Tencent would love to have its tendrils even further into every single game company there is. But it's look, Eve's getting on a bit. I'm sure he wants at some point not to just be worrying about the trials and tribulations of Ubisoft and who owns them, and is Vivendi coming back for the New Orleans funeral. So if this is on Bloomberg, it's more than conversations and little titterings. So potentially, I just think that company's in such a weird spot that it's a one to watch for the next couple of years. Like, are we sitting here in 5 years being like, yeah, Ubisoft just completely dissolved and all the franchises got sold off here, there, and everywhere? Like, can a titan of that size really disappear in modern games?
Wouldn't be a good thing.
No, definitely not.
14,000, probably way more than that. I feel like that's the last time I checked, and that was a couple of years ago. But they have more than 10,000 employees globally in the video game industry, and you want those jobs to stick around to keep that marketplace competitive for the people doing that work, so they can command higher salaries and all that stuff. But it also feels untenable. It also feels unsustainable, as it has been for a very long time. And maybe now, looking at it, it looks the most unsustainable it's ever been. So we'll see. I don't the Guillemots, Yves specifically, but the whole family is like a part of Ubisoft and Game Loft, I guess, but Ubisoft. And they don't like just sit back and let these things happen. They try to maneuver and play the political side of things and try to shore up their positions. It's very a succession over there, I assume. And that sounds like that process has begun in earnest once again. Them trying to make sure that they are in the best position to have the most power and the most money when all of this dust settles. And as for the quality of the games, fuck it. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, BlackRock nearly bought them in 2022, so it could be worse.
That's okay. Good point. Well, maybe they'll come back. Yeah. All right. Paramount and Saber Interactive are coming together to make the biggest Avatar: The Last Airbender game yet. This is from Ben Lyons at Game Reactor. The Avatar: The Last Airbender franchise has seen a bit of a resurgence as of late, with not only the Netflix live-action series continuing, but also plans for a film, and now also intentions to return to the game sector for a very ambitious project. We're told in a press release that Paramount Game Studios and Saber Interactive are coming together to develop a AAA RPG for PC and consoles that will be the biggest video game in the franchise history. And that's for Avatar: The Last Airbender. It'll be a completely new story, one where players will take on the role of an all-new, never-before-seen Avatar. This franchise always seemed like it had the possibility to like kind of move up a tier in terms of the kinds of games that were getting released for it. And I think its longevity has proven that it will be worth that all again. Now, Saber Interactive also feels like maybe the right team to approach this. We'll have a story on this. We'll actually do that story next about Space Marine 2. They seem capable of producing what by all measures should just be called a AAA game, but on a more reasonable budget, similar to maybe the Blumhouse model in movies, where it's like we're going to make a very specific kind of game that is big and looks great and plays great, and a lot of those fans will show up for it and they'll be very happy. And if they could do that with Avatar: The Last Airbender, I see a potential success here. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting that Paramount Game Studios are moving in this direction, because I'm just checking what they've done previously. They did SpongeBob SquarePants: The Cosmic Shake, which was licensed out to Purple Lamp Studios. Prior to that, it was mostly Roblox experiences, things of that nature. Paramount's sitting on an absolute mountain of IP, and IP is obviously king. So
yep.
I'm surprised that someone, not to denigrate Saber, but I'm surprised someone larger than Saber didn't go for the Avatar IP, because as you say, it's long lasting, it's very popular, and that in the game space, it basically has the comical history of having that game that gets you 100 gamer score.
Yep.
But outside of that, yeah, I think Saber have set themselves up where they can basically, their next game is a free hit in terms of, okay, let's see what we're going to do after Space Marine, because people are super into that. But yeah, I'm surprised that it's taken this long. There's a few properties like that seem like to be set up for RPGs for so long, especially in the kind of anime space, that just haven't happened. Like there's a couple of Attack on Titan games, but they're not really, they're very much B games. The Jujutsu Kaisen game is some fucking pish party game, which is really sad. But yeah, as Jan points out, we need a rocket powered RPG. I actually hear that's what Blue Point's on at the moment. But yeah, this is hopefully it's good, because I don't think if this is bad, it'll be a while before there's another crack at the whip, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully this is a licensing agreement where it's very much hands off from Paramount. They're just like, we don't know what we're doing. We don't make games. We just own these licenses. You guys can clearly handle a license. Do what you want with it. Yep.
Yeah, I think this is part of Saber's business model as well of expanding into games that are not going to be some huge change to what they've been doing recently. They could make something that feels, equivalent. That won't be exactly like Space Marine 2, but equivalent to Space Marine 2. But to make that really work for that kind of game, you do need an IP. And Avatar: The Last Airbender is also from maybe a similar tier of IP to Warhammer, where it's like it's popular, well known, and it's not as expensive as Star Wars or Marvel. So we can make this financially make sense for everybody involved. And so I think it's a good match. And I am, I think at this point, a fan of Saber's output. So yeah, looking forward to this, and I think it can work. To speak to that point, though, Space Marine 2 dev says game can succeed without selling absurd number of copies. This is from Darren Bontheus at GameSpot. Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 released to both critical and commercial acclaim last month, as more than 2 million players at launch helped it become the most played Warhammer game of all time on Steam alone. Speaking of the game's achievements, Saber Interactive Chief Creative Officer Tim Willits, formerly of id Software, recently explained how the game is expected to be successful without needing to reach lofty sales goals. We don't need to sell 4 million units to make it, Space Marine 2, a success, Willits said to IGN. There are many games, sadly, especially out of North American developers, where if you do not sell 5 million copies, you are a failure. I mean, what business are we in where you fail if you sell less than 5 million? And I think he's asking the right questions, right? I think it's the questions every time we get in this situation. We're like, man, you needed to do that. Like, Star Wars Outlaws, they were kind of needed to sell like 7 million to make that make sense. And it's like, oh, I get it. Star Wars very expensive, and you swung really hard, and swinging really hard is the business model because you've been making successful games in certain styles for so long. You got to get the next home run to kind of justify every little bit of growth you've been doing recently, and that's the capitalist system, not necessarily the choices made by Ubisoft. They're the choices you have to make because you're a business that exists in this environment. But what if you took a little bit of, had a little spine, made some decisions for yourself and said, what is actually best for the games we make, the people who make our games, and for our long-term success, our long-term viability? And it feels a lot like the question he's asking right here, which is, what kind of business are we in where you have to sell 5 million or you're a failure unless you sell 5 million? And I think them staking out this ground is going to be a very good for them, because I think there's going to be a lot of studios that try to retreat into this position and try to emulate what Saber's been doing recently. And it's probably going to get very crowded very soon, where we're actually going to get a lot of games in this style in the next 5 years. And we'll be talking about how there's too many games of that size and things will start failing because of that, right?
Bring back the quadruple A games.
Yeah,
I say. These guys, they've really nailed it with like all the messaging, all the interview responses, things of that nature. I mentioned in a few places that the actual game didn't really work for me, but from like a philosophical standpoint, like I love everything they're saying. I'm a big AAA guy, Jeff. I like big budget AAA games. Indie
games aren't real games.
Correct.
Quote unquote Jordan Midler.
Apart from Bellatrix, that's the one true game. But it's an untenable business outside of the absolute top end. If there was concerns about Spider-Man 2 not selling enough, Spider-Man 2,
yep,
PlayStation Spider-Man 2, we have to take a look towards ourselves and think, what are we doing? Caveat being, when GTA 5 comes out next year and sells 40 quintillion units, everyone else will go, that's the way to do it.
Yep.
Spend 15 years on a game and put it out and hope for the best.
I thought that would happen after Red Dead Redemption 2, and I don't feel like there's many developers that were like, we're gonna make a game like that. There's not been actually that many attempts to do that, which I'm like, hey, that's smart because you can't do it. You're right. Everyone that said maybe we should do it and then gave up, you were right to give up. That was a bad idea. You're right, though. People, I mean, like the investors will see the big numbers and be like, where is your Grand Theft Auto 6? And then some executive would be like, just give some non-answer and then go back to their actual developers, and they'll all laugh and be like, oh my, and cry. They'll laugh and cry and be like, yeah, well, I can't believe they said that.
It's like the old stories about like game makers coming into work after Breath of the Wild, like the weekend after Breath of the Wild, and everyone being like, why don't we just do like this and this part and this part? It's like, oh, Jesus Christ. This is not what we're doing here.
Oh, that's the lead designers on games are like, they'll go play something and come back, and you hear that all the time, which is why I always get frustrated. People are like, well, why are you comparing this game to that game? It's like, because the motherfuckers played it and they wanted to make their game like that because they're human and just like everybody else. Wouldn't it be cool if our game was more like Hades? Every game designer said that after Hades. All right. The new Until Dawn is more than just an upgrade. It's a hint of a sequel. This is from Michael McWhorter at Polygon. Developer Ballistic Moon's rebuilt and enhanced version of horror game Until Dawn, out this Friday, out today, goes beyond just visual upgrades for PlayStation 5 and Windows PC. The remastered re-release of the 2015 original also includes a little something more in the form of a new ending that points towards a possible future for the franchise. While the studio behind the new Until Dawn has said it did not want to alter the events of the game, instead focusing on a cinematic update to enhance its visuals, or change its visuals if you don't think they're actually enhanced. I know some people feel that way. The remasters contain a reworked prologue and at least one new ending. According to leaked pre-release footage of the remastered Until Dawn, that includes a new fate of Josh, Rami Malek's character, and an epilogue featuring Sam, played by Hayden Panettiere. Yeah, I think that this is one of those situations where it feels like the reason they're doing this is because they want to do more Until Dawn, and teasing a sequel and something like this also feels very in line with like kind of what you can do with the horror genre. So yeah, not too surprised to hear this. Do you think people are going to want more Until Dawn?
I think so. I think it's worth noting that I think people online were saying that Hayden came back for this like behind the scenes stuff. So clearly she's if that is the case, I can't verify this, but that's what people were saying. That she's came back to do some things for this. So yeah, I knew Until Dawn. I wonder who would make it at this point. But I can certainly see something like that happening. They have the film coming out that's got Peter Stormare in it, so interest in the IP is growing. So it'd be a good time to kind of put that out into the world. I've not played. I got a code for it yesterday. I've not played it yet. A couple of people were saying that it runs like quite badly, and there's some like technical problems with this. It's a fucking PS4 game. What are we playing at here?
Yeah, that's a bit silly.
It's not got any guns in it.
I did see like the side-by-side comparisons, and I'm like, I don't know which one's which.
I wrote a version of that story earlier, and I put a screenshot in it, and I was like, am I certain this isn't the PS4 game? And I only know it wasn't because VGC didn't exist when the PS4 game came out. So the only screenshots we had in the library were the new ones. I was like, what's that? When am I getting the Quarry remastered? That'll be next.
Yep. Yeah. And it is. I think so. I mentioned people aren't happy with some of the changes. It's there's color correction on the original game to kind of give it that blue tint, that blue hue, and they've just removed that here, and it's made it more a naturalistic color. And it's like, okay, those were artistic design choices, and removing those does not inherently improve the image. And it's like, yeah, that's very frequently how I feel. Now I never played Until Dawn, so it's like I'm not carrying any of that baggage personally, but I get people who say that. But we are going to play this remastered version on Monday, everybody. So we'll start it up. We're going to try to play through the whole game next week, and we'll make the decisions together, try to make a good time out of it, and see what we think ourselves. Real quick, last story: 53% of gamers prefer single player games. This is from Jonas Mackey at Game Reactor. Despite the extreme success of great single-player experiences like Elden Ring, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Hogwarts Legacy, Black Myth Wukong, and Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2, while live service ventures like Redfall and Concord have struggled considerably, the giants of the gaming world would continue to be focused on the live service concept. And that would be understandable if that was the absolute majority, what the absolute majority wanted to play. But now the analysis company Media Research presents a survey that reveals that 53% of all gamers prefer to play single player. And then you have to remember that the rest of the respondents didn't necessarily all vote for online multiplayer, but also local co-op, which was around 20% of respondents. This is something where I think in a survey, single player games are probably going to have a better chance of getting respondents that say, hey, that's what I prefer. I do remember a few years ago, though, you would look at like MPD or any sales chart, and multiplayer games were vastly outselling single player games. Now that, I think in the last few years, has sort of flipped back to be a little bit more equal, where last year you get Hogwarts Legacy #1 and then Call of Duty #2. And that feels to be like kind of where we're settling in at this point, where there are going to be a handful of single player games that are massive and a handful of multiplayer games that are going to be massive. And then what happens beyond that maybe it is like more likely for a single player game to succeed, but not so much more likely that it makes it a safe bet or something like that. Do you think this speaks to what publishers should be trying to make, or is this going to kind of like more tea leaves that are hard to read about? If you had money to invest in making games, maybe you should make this kind of game versus another kind of game.
Yeah, it's like the dollar per person argument, really. It's like the person that buys Hogwarts Legacy spends $70, but that same person that prefers the multiplayer game across the entire time they play that multiplayer game spends hundreds of dollars. Or in some extreme cases, weekly they're spending like $20 on skins. So I think if you were just to ask people in the street, you would probably get, especially people that would respond to something like this, as you say, would be maybe more single player inclined. But if it was like a forensic, how much do you spend more money on multiplayer games or single player games? I think multiplayer games, quite obviously.
I think we
smash it.
I think we have the data for that. Like when we do actually look at the end of the year and say, hey, where did most of the money go? It clearly went to multiplayer games, which is why those decisions keep getting made. But still, there does seem to be a growth of interest once again in big single player games from both sides, people playing and the people making them. So does that mean like Warner Brothers is going all in on single player games like Harry Potter or like Hogwarts Legacy? They said themselves they aren't doing that. So and they're the ones that have the data right in front of them about how well that game did. And even they're like, we're going to take some of these things like Harry Potter and make online multiplayer games. So expect a lot of both still, and expect the occasional, like just this week, I think Tim Sweeney was saying that investment in big single player games should probably go away because they keep running into walls, and Fortnite continues trucking along, making all the money in the world. And I get what he's saying, and people are going to keep saying that. But I think what's going to happen is it'll be the pendulum. We'll go back and forth. Sometimes it'll be high tide. Sometimes it'll be low tide. For single player games. And I think right now we're at mostly a high tide. And so you can expect some investment in that space going forward. And then if enough of these things do stumble, like enough Star Wars Outlaws happens, if like Dragon Age comes out and is pretty good and still has, it does it like it underperforms. I think, in a couple months we get EA on investor calls saying we're going back to investing more in live service games again. So we'll see, but it's going to be a pendulum swing forever.
How much of my money do I need to give EA and FC points in order to preserve single player games? Because I'll do it. I'm giving them the money anyway. So
yeah, that's. I think if you give them enough, they will just actually stop making single player games altogether. So it's a really delicate balance. Sorry,
would you like to see something absolutely fucking ridiculous?
Yeah, okay, yeah. What'd you pull?
Very kindly, I was sent this edition of EAFC 25. It says
they feel obligated to send it to you based on how much you play.
It's because I'm the world's best EAFC player. But I opened it and I was like, okay, there is my second ever physical PS5 game. But the journey continues because when you open it, there's nothing inside it. It's an empty case for EAFC 25.
What a twist! What the hell is happening here? Why'd they do that?
I was reliably informed there was supposed to be a code included, but busy time launching a game. So it was emailed to me separately. So
there was supposed to be something included, but not a disc. So
yeah, it's like a copy that you would find on the shelf at a game shop. It's not the real cover art. It's got nothing on the back. It just says like for the club or whatever. But when I opened that, I was like laughing out loud. I was like, if this is just what it's meant to be, best press kit I've ever received.
Yeah,
that's
incredible
so fucking
stuff.
funny. But yeah, I'm playing so much EAFC. It's so good.
It's a good one. It's a good entry.
It's much better than it's been in the past couple of years. I would have played it this much regardless, but I'm actually enjoying my time.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Happy for you. You get yours. I'm gonna start playing NHL today, and I won't play it as much as you play FC, but yeah. All right. Poll question coming up here in a second. Actually, let's just get that going right now. All right. Let's see there. Have you ever used Ryujinx or Yuzu? And a lot of the comments here have said, "Nice try, cop." So we'll see how much we can rely on this information. But 28% said yes, 40% said no, and 32% said I don't know what those are. And I bet quite a few of those might be yes as well. Either way, though, 28% out and proud saying, "Hey, I've used Ryujinx or Yuzu." of 3.3 thousand votes. This is probably why Nintendo is behaving the way that they're behaving. It has reached that threshold where it is the thing that maybe a lot of people think of first when they think of Nintendo games. I'm going to go get this, I'm going to pirate it, and I'm going to play it on an emulator. And I don't think that justifies a lot of Nintendo's behavior, but I think it explains it.
Yeah, it's been a real weird period where during the Echoes of Wisdom review period, I was on TikTok and just scrolling and seeing people play the full game over and over and over again. I'm like, well, it's so over at this point. But yeah, I don't know what those things are, and I'll stay there. Thanks.
Yeah, they don't.
Thanks, Jeff.
They don't give us access to it in prison. So yeah. Yeah, I think that, you know, they see these numbers, they know how frequently people are doing this, they have their ways of tracking that, and they want to reset the clock on all these things for Switch 2. So those dual motivations have led to the lawyers kind of just they've let the hounds loose, and we're seeing examples of that every week now, it seems like. All right, new poll question here in a second. Before we get to that though, Jordan, why don't you tell people where they could find you on the internet, what you have going on, all that good stuff.
Not to be morbid about it, but it's been a pretty fucking terrible week for the games media.
Yes.
After Desherto lost a lot of good people. Play, which is the British PlayStation magazine, formerly known as Official PlayStation Magazine, ended its run with Oscar, the former boss of that, being laid off earlier this year. Not only that, today GG Recon completely shut down. It is a terrible, terrible time. There are basically no jobs in games media and about 100 people that need those jobs. So in order to prevent that happening more and more, you should be supporting independent games media. If you like VGC, patreon.com/VGC, but don't just look into VGC, think about supporting us. Think about the people that you watch every week, be that Giant Bomb, Min-Max, Kinda Funny. Other people are available apparently, but I wouldn't know, just VGC. And think about supporting them, because one day you will see those tweets that say, I am looking for work because the ad market is impossible. Legacy games media deserves to live and is important. In a world where people can get away with saying that a Sony executive didn't know that Ghost of Yotei starred a woman, you need real games media to support. Patreon.com/Video Games Chronicle. Thank you.
They were caught blindsided by a
Sitting
woman.
there going, oh fuck, I can't believe this. Punching fuck at the screen.
Those darn game developers did it again. They put a woman in a game. Yeah, incredible stuff. Can you imagine imagine what it would actually be like to try to sneak a woman character in a game you're making for a corporation that's paying for you to make that game. Like all of the moving parts you would need to do to pull that off. And then imagine thinking that's possible and saying it out loud for everybody to hear.
There's one thing saying it, because the person that said it in no way believes that's true.
Of course,
knows
right.
They're lying. But the people that believed it,
yeah.
how get like there's some people that do the grift that keep it to just believable enough,
right?
Where it's like
they're line steppers, line stepping. Yeah.
A lot of people could be saying this sounds plausible, but when you're getting to the point where it's like Hiroki Totoki was sitting there like, oh my fucking god, what have we done? I can't believe this. Ghost of Yotei.
Yeah.
Where's Ghost of Tsushima? I signed off on a document that said Ghost of Tsushima 2 featuring man. What is this? We were misled, Jeff.
Were we misled? Yeah, God. That's always a plan in my head too. That's actually what I always have to remember is the people that signed the Grumm's petitions or whatever, and the videos they posted of themselves. And this was just not the top class of society in those videos. Some real great thinkers among their ranks. And it's just like, oh, these are the people that would believe that Hiroki Totoki was caught off guard by a woman in a video game. All right, new poll question. What do you prefer, single player games or multiplayer games? We will get the results of that on Game Mess Mornings here on Giant Bomb on Monday. Yes, I should be here for Monday, although I'm going to a baseball game that afternoon. Speaking of Giant Bomb, though, BCR is happening at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern. So in about an hour-ish, we'll be going live with that. We're going to talk about Silent Hill 2. Jan's been playing. Dan has played. I got some questions. Going to ask the boys some of that stuff. We'll get that going. And then UPF at noonish Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern. We are going to probably build a bridge. We are probably going to... We talked about Pico Park 2, building bridges out of human beings. And then... then we saw that Worms Armageddon got updated and got released, but we might just play the PC version. So we might do Worms, and that'll be our demo day to end the week. Well, we'll see. We got some stuff that we could be doing. It'll be unprofessional. I can guarantee you that. In the meantime, though, Jordan Midler, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and talking about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Is our long national nightmare over? Is one Tamir Hussein returning next week? Is that the case?
I think he is supposed to return next week. Our returning champion will come back from his crusades, a victor, reverse crusades. And let's see, anything else I should mention? No, just if you're watching live, hang around. We'll have more stuff, like I said, about 55 minutes to an hour. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye. Even thanks for listening as well. Off of YouTube.